What you are about to watch is the rise of the Hall of Shores dwarves. This is a fortress I started on a saltwater beach, and somehow these dwarves have become masters of the giant animal and bears. We've defended off dragons, giant birds, hordes and hordes of goblins, humans, and dwarves alike. We fought off the undead spawned from a necromancer's hands, and yet we are still standing, even after burying hundreds of our kinsmen. Now, before we get started, I do want to say thank you so much to the almost 1,100 of you that are subscribed to my channel. It means the world to me. And if you enjoy this video, please leave a like, subscribe. It helps me out a ton. Now, let's get into it. Welcome to the Hall of Shores. This is a fortress created by the Archland dwarves off the side of an ocean. I decided to do this because I've never played on the side of an ocean before. I've never played with salt water in Dwarf Fortress, so this was brand new to me. And as you can see, I didn't have a whole lot of trees to work with, which really concerned me going into this. So this starts off like every other Dwarf Fortress playthrough, and we are going to dig a hole into the side of this hill, and we're going to start building our base. So we're going to drop down a few levels, give us some vertical space to work with in our base. So just like every other playthrough, we're going to change the tasks for each dwarf. We're going to go in and do all of our standing orders and kitchen orders. And we're going to create a quick pasture on top and put all of our animals into it. I'm also going to put a couple dogs down here in this hallway to protect my dwarves. So to start with, I start building a farm, and I also start building our first stockpile of our main room. The main room stockpile will be for just about everything, and it will be surrounded by workshops, and obviously up here at top, we are going to go ahead and build some farm plots. Here are some of the workshops going in. And I like to do these very symmetrical builds when I do my main floors where all my workshops are at, just to make it as efficient as possible. The first couple workshops going to go in are going to be the carpenter's workshop. It's going to craft all of our wood items, and also our stone workers. And these are going to do our thrones, our tables, doors, everything with stone. They're going to be doing it. Plump helmets are already in the ground and growing, which is great. And we're just going to keep working here and start adding more things like stills. We're going to add more things like kitchens, the butcher shop. And this will start to produce more food as we get to butcher animals and create meals. And with the butchering of animals, that comes some little byproducts like leather and like bones and skulls, which the crafts dwarf will use to build jewelry. We're also going to build a gem cutter's workshop. Like every Dwarf Fortress playthrough, we have to add our automatic task, which you see that I'm doing right here. And there's a lot of them. Now, adding a couple pastures underground, I did bring pigs. So pigs do not need fungus or grass to eat, so they can live underground from day one. And midsummer of our first year, we do get our first group of migrants. This was about 8 migrants. Which also came in with a lot of professional people. They had some skills to them. And here we're going to go ahead and build our first bedrooms. I like to do mine in groups of 10. I find it's just easier to do the math, and I can quickly do the work orders for them. Now, after that, we're going to go ahead and build our dining room. This is going to keep our dwarves really happy during this playthrough, and they are going to enjoy eating here. As we come into autumn, our fortress is coming along very nicely. And while I was building my metalworking area, the mountain homes decided to send the first caravan of the playthrough. So I went ahead and finished up placing down some furnaces and also our metalworker before going up and trading with them. Now, I didn't have much to trade at this point. I didn't have the gems that I wanted, which I usually trade, but I did have a lot of turtle shell jewelry, which I went and traded for some very basic goods along with some rough gems that I had. like more picks, and a few plump helmet spawns. Soon after, while delving deeper, we hit our first cavern. Now this cavern was pretty expansive. I decided to dive a little deeper and closer to the fresh water. And with this, fungus started growing on our first floors, so I was able to bring in the yaks underground. I then found out that there was a reptile species living down in our caverns, so this is going to provide a very formidable opponent when we do decide to expand. After realizing I had no coal or lignite in any of my layers, I decided to get some wood furnaces so I could start burning wood into charcoal and producing metal bars. And diving deeper, we found a magma pool, which upon investigation was just another large cavern with not much in it. But diving a little bit below that, we did find some semi-molten rock. Back within the base, with a little bit of coal and some metal bars, we decided to start creating some armor and weapons for our dwarves. To protect our base, we decided to make a trap hallway. At first, this was populated with stonefall traps, which are a very effective way to protect yourself very early in the game, but they are one use and then they needed to be reset. Next, a temple was in order. Our dwarves needed somewhere to pray to their gods to keep them very happy. Understanding that these stonefall traps are one use before they needed to be reset, we decided to create some serrated discs out of copper, and also some copper mechanisms to go into the trap hallway and give us some weapon traps. And with these serrated discs will be tearing through any enemy that decides to walk through this long hallway. With the basic functions down of the base, we are now going to create a tavern. This is a very important part of the base, as you get some visitors that will tell you about their travels, tell you about things going on in the world, and also it keeps your dwarves very, very happy. They get to socialize within your base, and this is always a good thing for them. Later into our second year, the dwarves of the mountain homes came back with a caravan where we got a couple animals in cages, and we also traded for a few more anvils to add to our metal production. With some excess stone, we decided to start laying down some floors and making the base a little bit nicer. We also added some wells down into our cavern where we can pull fresh water and our dwarves can wash themselves, and to provide fresh water for medical uses. And maybe this is foreshadowing, but we also needed fresh water for any wounds that we may get in future encounters or battles, which happened when a giant olm decided to come up out of the water and try to go up into the base. And quickly our military dwarves were sent down to dispatch the olm. After wounding 2 dwarves, it tried to make its way up into the fortress before quickly being dispatched by one of our axe dwarves. After knocking it unconscious, he managed to slay the beast by decapitating it. And with the story of the Archland dwarves and the Hollow Shores fortress just getting started, I am really excited to see where this takes us. I thought maybe it would be another peaceful year, but I was proven wrong. It did not take long for our population to explode, wonders to be discovered, and enemies to come forth. Let us waste no more time and let's get into the story. Now, to start off, we created a barracks for our melee infantry. We were still gearing them up and supplying them with recruits, but we did need a place for them to train and store their gear. Like I said, we didn't have many weapons or many pieces of armor, so we went ahead and started to put in some work orders for some. Gearing up our dwarves with metal armor is very, very important. But to get metal, we did need to get more production when it came to metal, so we started to dig around and poke and prod and try to find this magma pool. our dwarves got sent off into different directions to try to find warm stone. And eventually we hit it. Now, with this magma pool discovered, we were able to go in and put magma smelters in and put magma furnaces in, which would greatly increase our production of metal, allowing us to smelt and refine and craft without having to burn wood from the surface, which we already don't have a lot of. So we cleared out a large room and we started to punch holes in the floor below to have access to the heat from the magma. Placing our workshops over them, we were now in business. This allowed us to completely demolish and disassemble our upper crafts room, moving all of our anvils, our stockpiles, and our production down below to the magma. I decided to go ahead and put a dining room in. Our dwarves working down there were almost 150 floors below where we started at, so they did need food down there. Early summer, we did have some human traders come. We also had our very first artifact, which was a large gem, a red zircon. So after we built a temple and dedicated that temple to the Order of Dusk, which was gaining a lot of worshippers within our fort, we had to elect a priest, and I also went ahead and threw the new artifact in there, which greatly increased the value to over 10,000, which made this a temple complex. After that, we went ahead and appointed a new priest for this temple. The mountain homes came back and said that we were now an official land of the realm, allowing us to appoint a baron, which obviously our expedition leader had been filling in for that role anyway, so we're going to go ahead and appoint him. Upstairs, we added a few more instruments to our tavern to try to bring in some guests, which we were not getting a lot of at this point. Mid-autumn, all hell broke loose when a weremole child attacked our fort, sending our soldiers up to the front gate where the beast was trying to get into the fort and wreak havoc amongst our dwarves. Thankfully, some trader, caravan, merchant guys ended up stomping out the beast. Now, a couple of our dwarves did get bit. That would mean in the next moon phase, they would become weremoles themselves. With our gem cutter getting bit at least 8 times, we went ahead and expelled a clothes maker, and then we ended up locking up at one of our cooks that got bit in the hospital. The gem cutter also had no family members, so it was very easy to expel her and get her away from the fort. And with the cook trapped away, she could safely transform into a weremole all she wants. She will be stuck in that little room. Next, we had a thief goblin enter the fort. He did not last long as the bunch of dwarves absolutely obliterated him. And again, the cook transformed into a weremole. I kept trying to get my Marks dwarves to go down there and end her, but it seemed like they just didn't want to move, and I could not understand why. They did have weapons and bolts, but she would transform back into a human before I could even get people down there to get rid of her. Finally, though, I did end up getting them both down there on a station order, and when she transformed, I set them to a kill order. Now, this Marks dwarf went 25 for 25, piercing the weremole every single shot. It was bleeding out. It had no hope. And then our Marks dwarf ran out of bolts. Running off to find more, that is when the weremole transformed back into a human, regaining its full health and losing all injury. While I waited for another transformation, we went ahead and made another barracks room for our Marks dwarves. We also added about 20 bedrooms for our growing population. We were currently around 55 dwarves, which is up from 17 at the start of the video. With the weremole transforming back, I could not get my Marks dwarves to act on any of my commands. When she transformed, I figured this was good a time as any to just go ahead and expel her. She was a single family member, so it was just her that had to leave. And then some elf merchants showed up, and this was very, very exciting to me because with them they brought a giant black bear. Now, this black bear was soon to be a weapon of war for the Hollow Shore dwarves. I quickly threw him in front of our front gate where our dogs used to patrol before they were killed. And quickly he saw his first taste of combat. two thieving dwarves decided to march right into the front gate, where they were promptly met with our giant black bear, causing the second dwarf to run in a panic after seeing its friend absolutely dismantled by a giant bear. The bear had taken her friend's leg and shook her from side to side until she was no longer alive. And with his first kill, we promptly named him Grimfang. Soon after, in late summer, we decided to send off our fully staffed and fully iron-geared dwarves on their first mission. Now, we decided to go raise a nearby village that had less than 10 people as a quick, easy campaign. Upon their return, we found that it wasn't goblins that actually held the camp, but an undead dwarf, which we couldn't manage to kill. He kept getting back up. And the loot, honestly, wasn't that good either. One iron anvil did come of it, which we will put to good use, and a copper bookcase for our future library. Back underground, we worked on a couple guild halls, and also a few more temples, using artifacts that we built and putting them on pedestals to increase the value of each room. The fortress was now bustling with over 92 members. Obviously, we kept having to add more bedrooms for our growing population. With an increase of idle hands, we decided to go ahead and start polishing up our main floors, making our dwarves much happier. Not knowing just below them, a forgotten beast had entered our realm and hunted like an alligator under the water, taking out multiple crundles. The forgotten beast was the least of our worries, as a vile force had entered our lands from our border. 8 goblins and 2 kidnapped dwarves marched upon our fortress. They were goblins, but they were pretty skilled foes, and 2 dwarves falling in behind them, obviously brainwashed to fight their own kin, did worry me a little bit. Quickly they descended into our trap hallway. This was the only entrance into the fort. As they went through the hallway, they were cut down quickly by copper blades. Stonefall traps crushed their bones and their skulls from above. And yet they still rushed in, the dwarf leading the way. The skilled dwarf had evaded all of our traps so far. It was almost like he recognized his kin's handiwork. With goblins being cut down all around him, the dwarf charged forward, until a serrated blade caught his shoulder and ripped the tendons off, making him drop his weapon in the process. And soon after, he was caught by more axe blades, unsuspecting while he was injured. The goblins, upon seeing his body as they entered that hallway, decided to run, getting cut down on the way out also. And with the easy victory that our trapped hallway provided, we sent out a cleaning crew to go pick up any weapons and armor that our foes had left, and also to go bury the bodies. The Hall of Shores stands 1 year older. Now, the fortress has been coming along great, and it's not the problems within the fortress that we are actually having issues with. It's the problems coming from outside of our own borders. We started off this year with creating our second melee infantry squad, filling it up with new recruits and giving them metal armor and weapons. Now, I had no idea how much conflict they were actually going to see within this year. They were almost completely unprepared. In early spring, the dead walked into our lands. The Necromancer's Tower from nearby had resurrected plenty of undead dwarves, and they now marched upon our fortress. We went ahead and put our melee infantry squads in the buffer room, where they would be our last stand against any enemies coming through the trap hallway. This undead force was full of 21 undead creatures of dwarf, elf, and human blood. Their rotting corpses were just barely held together by armor and leather straps. And quickly, with our gate closed, they decided to descend into our trap hallway. The undead creatures were not the fastest or the most mobile, but they did move with purpose. They were in our trap hallway in just a matter of seconds. Our traps went to work. Our stonefall traps would break already rotten bones and dent the metal armor that they carried. Our weapon traps quickly dismembered them and cut off limb, tearing through limb, bone, and rotten flesh alike. It seemed that a couple of the dwarves did move a little bit faster than their fellow zombies, but they were still cut down all the same. They did end up killing one dwarf, one of our clothes makers. He was caught on the surface when we shut the gates, and he did not make it back in time. After the majority of them had died, we sent out our military to finish off the stragglers. They made quick work of the 2 or 3 zombies that stayed above the surface. We then sent out the cleaning crew to pick up any metal bits of armor that the zombies had left. The rotten bits and pieces of our foes were thrown into an atom smasher, one of our new garbage disposal systems that we used within the fort. Snatchers still braved our front gate, and as they rushed in, they actually bypassed our guard animals. Setting the military upon them, they ended up killing one of the Snatchers. And up above, our bear Grimfang actually got one of the dwarves as it ran through. They weren't as sneaky as they wished they would have been. Also, a dog got a kill on a goblin. So promptly, we named him Warhound. A human caravan arrived where we traded them a lot of shell and bone, jewelry and crafts, and we traded for a lot of food. Down below a forgotten beast, a skinless iguana made its way beneath our fort. Now this beast did not have as many kills as most forgotten beasts did, but it was still a threat none the least. After getting attacked by a horde of zombies, it was time to do a counterattack against the necromancer themselves. We knew where their tower was, we knew where they lived, so we sent out a military group after them to see if we could manage to kill the necromancer to put an end to these attacks. When the military group arrived back, we actually did manage to kill the necromancer, along with 30 undead dwarves and 10 undead humans. What we did not know is that they sent 53 more undead creatures shambling upon our fortress soon after. Now, 2 fishermen were caught on the march of the undead. They ended up dying, but they were not resurrected due to there being no necromancer in these war parties. Again, the zombies descended upon our fortress and to our trap hallway. An undead dwarf clad in armor rushed through our halls, being faster than all the other ones and getting caught into a metal cage trap. The rest of the undead creatures began shambling through the trap hallway, their rotten flesh stinking its corridors. Our traps did their job, cutting down the undead beasts one by one as they made their way through the hallway. A lot of these undead creatures carried lots of valuable armor and weapons with them. We were down to our last cage trap also, so there was a chance our military would actually see combat during this siege. As the zombies got closer and closer, our dwarves prepared for a fight, which they got when the zombie broke through the hallway and they went and cleared out the trap corridor, slaying 7 undead dwarves as they went. Our cleanup crew was sent out to pick up all of the armored bits and reset our traps, already preparing for the next fight. These attacks of undead creatures needed to come to an end. We had other things to focus on, and fighting zombies was not going to be one of them. The counterattacks went pretty well. A lot of undead creatures were slain, and a little bit of loot was collected from the necromancy towers. Still in the early spring, 31 goblins charged our fort. Our military could not catch a break this season. Declining their petitions for a loss of life, we decided to go ahead and fight them. Closing our gates, the goblins made the same mistake that the mindless zombies did. They charged our trap hallway. They were much quicker than the undead creatures, but they were cut down all the same. Our stonefall traps breaking bones and necks, while our weapon traps dismembered them and tore off tendons and cut meat from bone. Weapons and shields dropped to the ground as their arms carrying them were dismembered. There were lots of kidnapped dwarves that had grown up believing they were goblins coming to fight their own kin. But they were cut down all the same as the green scum. After rapidly losing, the goblins and the kidnapped dwarves decided to retreat, climbing over the bodies of their allies and swimming through pools of bile and blood to get out of the fort. The cleanup crew went about mopping the floors, picking up armor and weapons that we would then use for our own armies. and obviously resetting our traps. Hearing how rich the Hall of Shores fortress had become, the humans sent 3 full trade wagons to our fortress, bringing along with them a female grizzly bear, which obviously we would trade for and put her in the hallway with Grimfang, our giant black bear. Midsummer, we were attacked by a bird that was larger than the dragons of legend. I had never dealt with this foe before, so I was very interested to see what this creature was. Closing our gate, I watched as the bird flew in from our borders with rapid pace, killing 5 of our dwarves, including our legendary gem cutter, which deeply hurt our fortress and our production of valuables. The bird itself had over 55 notable kills from other fortresses spanning all the way back to the year of 31, 69 years before our fortress was even founded. The giant bird was eventually cut down by one of our gem cutters as it buried a copper pickaxe deep into the bird's skull, rendering it lifeless. After finding the gem setter, we gave her a title that she had greatly earned, the Bane of Feather. With more and more dwarves being slaughtered outside of our gates, we decided to add a couple tombs to the fortress. After realizing our artifact hall was not going to be a good enough location, I went ahead and built a place that I will call the Heroes Hall. This hallway will display the heroic acts of our dwarves for all to see. So we went ahead and moved the now skeleton of the giant eagle up to the hallway, which a child carried, and it weighed over 36,000 pounds. In midwinter, another giant dragon-sized bird decided to attack our fortress. The giant rock Teofima flew from our borders and quickly made her way over to the fortress, where our spear dwarves quickly met her. After piercing her multiple times with iron weapons, she decided to fly off for a moment and try to regain her strength. Quickly, she realized she could not leave here without a fight and returned back to our dwarves. The dwarf wielding the spear that put the bird out of its misery decided to name the weapon Besmar Dimshosh. The giant eagle laid next to her kin in the Heroes Hall. These 2 corpses were now on display for all to see within the fortress. Again, a dwarf child carried it up to the Heroes Hall, this one only weighing 26,000 pounds, an entire 10,000 pounds less than the previous one. Another year has passed here in the fortress of the Hall of Shores. The Archland dwarves will always welcome you with open arms when you arrive. And yet this was not a year of gratitude and homemaking, but a year of conflict. Hopefully there are brighter seasons ahead of us. The year 106 started with a beast that I had never seen before, a dragon, Osnoth Angot. Magical and fire-breathing, she descended upon our fort with haste. Closing the gates, this huge reptilian creature descended upon our fort. Though this dragon was sickly with low stamina, she had over 90 total kills over her lifespan. She dashed into our trap hallway, which was the only entrance into the fort still. Gathering the corpse, we brought it up to the Hall of Heroes, where it will lay for the rest of time. And while trading with the elves soon after the dragon's death, we were notified that there was a were-giraffe coming into our fortress. Again, pulling the lever to try to keep it out, we found out that it was already within the trap hallway, and it was too late to gather some dwarves back to the fortress. A couple of our dwarves fought tooth and nail with the beast in the trap hallway. The military was sent after it, yet the traps themselves within the hallway are what cut the animal down. With one of our mechanics, Asmel, getting absolutely obliterated by this beast. His face, neck, back, and chest mangled beyond all recognition. Quickly we carried him over to the hospital, where he was going to rest up. Mid-spring, the Hall of Shores became the capital of our civilization, with our king, Cadil Odom arriving with his entourage. Quickly we built him a large bedroom, office, dining hall, and throne room, with all the furniture fit for a king. Ashmel, the mechanic that fought with the were-giraffe, actually turned into one himself. Somehow our doctors missed a bite mark, apparently. Ashmel, the were-giraffe, got in a fight with 5 of our dwarves before the military could arrive, but our 5 dwarves put him out of his misery. And again, our doctors failed us, missing a bite mark on one of the other victims, and there was another were-giraffe transformation within the fort. The humans soon arrived with 7 full wagons of trading. Along with them, they brought another stray black bear, which we traded for and added to our growing army of these animals. From below our fortress, the forgotten beast Togabe Leto Atok climbed the stairway up, torturing and killing our miners as it went. This enormous feathered toad with fire breath snuck into the fortress from an entrance unknown to us. With so much fire, smoke, and death and vile being thrown about, this fight took over an hour to finish up. The military was sent after the forgotten beast, but had killed so many miners down below. Over 40 of our fellow dwarves were slaughtered by this forgotten beast alone. It roamed every hallway, breathing fire down every corridor, stomping out any dwarf that came within reach of it. In its craze, it was burning its own flesh, melting the fat along its body. That's when a swords dwarf named Thicket added the beast to the history books. Another win for the Hollow Shores dwarves. With over 40 dead, we needed to go ahead and start burying them. Thicket, the swords dwarf, earned himself the title Sword of the Beast after killing the forgotten beast in the caverns. The corpse of Leto Atik, the forgotten beast, was placed within the Hall of Heroes, right next to the dragon corpse from earlier this year. Thicket earned himself a tomb amongst our greatest of royalty. A vile force arrived in the next season. There wasn't many, but it was enough to warrant a response. With lots of dwarves that they had kidnapped from other regions, they charged into our trap hallway, which again was the only entrance into the fort with the gate closed. The traps did their job, the serrated blades cutting the enemies down, separating limb from body, the stonefall traps knocking them unconscious or breaking bones underneath them. The Axe Lord Dwarf, hearing the calls to come back to the fortress, attempted to come through the trap hallway, where he was then caught and cut down by the enemies. Hearing this, our military was sent out after them, and the military cut them down swiftly in retaliation to the death of one of their own. The elves arrived. To them we traded our cut gems, and they brought along with them a giant fox, which we figured would be a great addition to our buffer room just after the trap hallway, giving us another warrior to help fight. From our depths crawled another enemy, a forgotten beast, Azok, an enormous one-eyed tick with a trunk and bloated body. It snuck up again from an entrance unknown to us. This creature also breathed fire like the last. Again, it climbed up our staircases, killing every miner and passerby that was traveling in and out of the caverns. Yet the beast was cut down by a spear dwarf named Zuton. The spear dwarf earned himself the title Blood Gorger's Bane after killing the forgotten beast in the shape of a tick. The corpse of the beast was carried up into the Hall of Heroes also. Needing a fresh water source that was safe after finding an entrance that the forgotten beast was using to get into our fortress, we ended up creating a new water source. A pool that could be locked off to keep them from climbing into our fort. After trading for another grizzly bear, the bear pits were created a couple levels below ground, where we will now breed grizzly bears to use in battle against all of our enemies. These bears will hopefully fight side by side just as ferociously as the dwarves that are with them. While building in the caverns and trying to set up a base of operations down there, a forgotten beast snuck up upon us. As it rushed in, smelling new prey in the caverns, our military dwarves stood at the ready. An entire squad then charged the beast, where we discovered that dwarven steel reigned superior regardless. With a dwarf Thicket ended up slaying the beast, earning her the title the Slayer of Damu. which all dwarves will now know her by. And after slaying the beast, she renamed her sword a title that was most deserving. Then the corpse was placed in the Hall of Heroes along with all of the others, and a statue made in resemblance of the beast. The elves came back. Once again, we traded cut precious gems to them, and once again they brought us some giant animals to put in our buffer zone. This time a giant dingo and a giant raccoon will join our ranks. We also had the birthing of our first grizzly cubs, a set of twins, male and female. These will be trained into war grizzlies here very soon when they mature. With the growing population, we needed to expand the bedroom hallways. 30 new bedrooms were created for our mini dwarves that had been moving in the last few seasons. The military was set out on a new mission. We needed to expand our population into other regions, other fortresses, to leave us a small buffer between us and the goblins. So the military was sent out to raid the nearby settlement Roof Rims. And soon after, once we raided it, the settler squad was sent out to go ahead and colonize the land of Roof Rims. They created a local government there called the Axe of Crewing. Zos, our admin, became the administrator over there also, leading the dwarves. After their loss at Roof Rims, the goblin sent out a counterattack. They marched upon our fort once again with many kidnapped dwarves amongst the ranks. With the drawbridge up, they descended into our trap hallway. The mix of human, dwarves, and goblin scum marched through our trap hallway, getting cut down once again by our well-crafted traps. The stones dropping upon their heads, the serrated blades from underneath them dismembering them and letting them bleed out into our hallway. A woodcutter named Adil got stuck on the way back in, and our military, hearing that, charged into the hallway to claim vengeance. Quickly, their master-crafted shields, swords, spears, and maces went to work in the hallway, cutting down our foe one by one. Most of the dwarves going into a blood craze after seeing a fellow dwarf cut down. When the elves returned soon after in the spring, they brought with them another giant black bear, which we traded for, now creating what will be known as the giant bear pits, next to the bear pits that have already been created for the grizzly bears. This is where we will breed our giant black bears, including Grimfang, an already legendary bear that we have had guarding our fortress for several years now. Knowing that our fort has been conquering enemies left and right, we needed to expand the Heroes' Hall, because these pedestals will soon be filled with the corpses of our enemies and the statues of tales long gone. Now, while we were working on the Heroes' Hall, we sent out another raiding party to the Tower of Glazed Chestnut, where we had killed a necromancer just a couple years ago. We also sent out a settling party soon after. The settling party made it and went ahead and started building a fort. So the Tower of Glazed Chestnut was no longer held by the enemy, but held by fellow allied dwarves. This gave us 2 lands nearby that would start to build up as the years progressed. For the last couple years, 7 wagons from the humans and their traders have been sitting in our entrance to the fort. Building a bridge, we decided we were going to smash them as soon as possible to get them out of the way because they had blocked a dwarven caravan. They had been told to leave but yet chose not to, so we would retaliate. We called the dwarves back into the fortress, that way we knew everybody was safe, and we went ahead and pulled the lever, smashing all of the traitors, and quickly, the ones that did survive spread out, attacking every dwarf within range. Our military was sent up after them to clean up what was left over. We cut down the humans and their beasts alike, with no remorse. All of their trade goods that they had brought with them was now claimed for the Hall of Shores dwarves. While doing the cleanup, a weremole child marched upon our fortress. After calling everybody in, the weremole child chased one of our people into the fort. Following closely behind, he actually managed to dodge one of our traps. The weremole child was stomped out quickly, but he did bite the miner. so he did have to get expelled from the fort. A new tavern was built on the first floor for everybody to enjoy. This tavern was an upgrade from the one a few floors below, which will now just be for our dwarves and long-term citizens. And just like that, that is 10 years for the Hall of Shores dwarves. I really hope you guys did enjoy this. This is episodes 1 through 4 all mashed together, so all the editing was kind of done previously, but it was a ton of work to get those 4 episodes out. I'm talking maybe 10 to 15 hours of footage, all condensed down to what looks to be about 40 minutes. So like I said, I am a very small YouTuber at the moment, so if you would leave a like, subscribe, or comment something you'd like to see in the future, that helps me out a ton. I really appreciate the fact that you even clicked on this video, and if you're hearing this, that means you've stayed the entire video, and I really, really, really do appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.